now my question to myself is always, what if? What if it goes wrong? And what if I'm wrong? What if I made a mistake in my assessment?
When I was making a video on convexities, I struggled with why the data was showing that human triggering is more common on steep slopes, but convexities play an important role in route selection. Marc Piché nailed it by explaining that convexities are important for route finding because they are easier to identify from a distance than the steep slopes below them. For this podcast, I wanted to tap his insight again. Marc started working in avalanche terrain as a heli-ski guide in the late 1990s. As an ACMG mountain guide and professional member of the Canadian Avalanche Association, he has enjoyed a varied career in guiding, guide training, and avalanche education spanning several continents. Marc spent the last 12 years as the technical director of the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides and has recently stepped down with a goal of spending less time at his keyboard. Marc, what habits work for you, or what advice do you have for your younger self?
So the first thing that if I could go back and give some advice to my younger self in the field, and this is probably advice that I received and probably had to learn on my own anyway, would be to really recognize, acknowledge, and respect uncertainty. I think it was pretty easy to be overconfident and quite often putting all the eggs in one basket when it came to decision making. And now I find myself far more reluctant to do that, whether it's where I stop for lunch, under a slope that maybe I deem is just fine that day, but now my question to myself is always, what if? What if it goes wrong? And what if I'm wrong? What if I made a mistake in my assessment? And whereas I used to be a lot more confident in making those kind of decisions and absolutes. So I do a lot more stacking the deck in my favor, or hedging my bets, or try not to put all my eggs in one basket, if you want to use a few sayings to explain it. And just being far more comfortable with the fact that I might be wrong. And having now spent enough years and days out there to see quite a few instances where either I was wrong or other people who were very certain, and in conditions that were likely quite easy to be certain in, and still things ended up being different than anticipated. The second one would be not trying too hard to outsmart the problem. I definitely spent a number of years where I would try really, really hard to understand exactly what the avalanche problem was. And if it was surface horror, trying to understand where it was, where it wasn't, where it might be more reactive, where it would be less reactive. And even though that is still part of what I do on a daily basis, I tend to think of things in much bigger pictures now and on a more macro scale, and spend a lot less energy trying to outsmart the problem, and just being more accepting of the problem and more willing to eliminate larger swaths of terrain from my run list or my terrain list for the day, knowing that I'll get to go there again some other time in much better conditions.